right.
That's okay.
Having relocated one audience member to the orientation for the trip to Japan, good thing they didn't sit here for a while before they realized, this doesn't sound like, I hope this isn't Japan. So I'm Nancy White, director of the Writers Project, one of a long line of very fine directors, some of whom are in the audience today. And it's my pleasure to introduce the person I've been billing around campus as the sci-fi fantasy poet, dystopian genius, Brad Richard, in hopes partly of getting some genre, melding in the literary interests out there, but also because that really is how you might have to, genre categorize this particular book that he has most recently written. So, his earlier books include Habitations, which came out in the year 2000, and then Motion Studies, which won the Washington Prize 2010. Does that sound right? Yeah. Shortly to be followed, by Butcher's Sugar from Sibling Rivalry Press, which is one of my favorite press names in the history of press names. Couldn't we have had a cool name like that? And then most recently, this book of poems, which won the 10th Gate Prize, also from the WordWorks, which is how Brad and I had originally met. And over the years, he'd been telling me about this book he's working on, and he'd describe it to me, and I'd think, oh, okay, Brad, I'll just take your word for it, but what? And there was an intensity to the little portions of what he would tell me about it that I liked at the time, and my suspicion is that as recent politics evolved, there was probably even more energy, intensity, rage that helped fuel the completion of the book. It came in, he just told this story to my poetry class, came in as a submission July 15th, and July 28th, he heard, you win, we're publishing your book.
Wow.
So, yeah, if only, and he had just finished it July 14th, so the fastest turnaround in the history of books, but not till your fourth book. He lives in New Orleans, so as he told us this morning, some of the poems are fueled by the injustices and stresses there caused by Hurricane Katrina and all of American history. He taught for many years at the Lucier Charter High School and is now enjoying a robust first year of retirement from said duties. Do you still co-direct the Scholastic Art and Writing?
I do, although I'm retiring from that too.
Oh, okay. The Scholastic Art and Writing Awards of Southeast Louisiana, and a regional affiliate of the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers. You can see, he has a history of mentoring the young, helping others develop as artists, helping others find how to create a life as an artist, and seeing that process all the way through, not just for himself, but for many other people. He co-curates The Waves, an LGBTQ and plus sign reading series, which I think it's a national reading series, right? Yeah, you have some people from locally and some people from all over. He was the 2015 Louisiana Artist of the Year. Did you get like a big spotlight for that?
Got a cool trophy.
Ooh, really? I love it. Oh, great. Your own Oscar. And also has received awards and fellowships from poets and writers, the Cerna Foundation, the NEH, and the Louisiana Division of the Arts. He has a website if you want to learn more about it, but I think I really should just give this podium to him and let him scare you badly.
Thank you, Nancy, for a lovely introduction.
introduction. Thank you to Nancy's amazing students. I really enjoyed visiting the class. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Thank all of you for coming out for this midday reading. I was supposed to read from Motion Studies back in, I think, 2012.
That's right.
And Nicole Cooley and I came up here. We were having a lovely dinner the night before, and people were checking the weather. It's like, oh, it says there's gonna be some snow. This was April. This was the first weekend in April. Snow schmo. Blizzard. Blizzard. So I didn't get to read. So I'm really glad to be reading.
About time.
Yes. So, my elevator pitch for this book has been, these poems are set in a kingdom ruled by a pathetic tyrant whose nemesis is a mythically gigantic blue wasp who lives in a burrow beneath the palace. And that's all true. But it's also incomplete and a little bit misleading, because it makes it sound like this is going to be a book about, superheroes and big epic battles and things like that. That is not the case. As I worked my way deeper into the book, I became much more interested in just ordinary people who had to survive in a world like this, which unfortunately is a world very much like our own. And it's a world in which power has gone completely mad. So some of these people are just victims of that power. Some of these people are trying to get some power themselves, and some of them have just, as you'll see, gone a little crazy themselves. I'm going to start with the wasp herself, with her underneath the palace. The wasp knows. Hooked in sockets between her eyes, her antennae rise. Scape, pedicel, bristly flagella, muscles make them flick and pivot as she tests the air, tuning in. Sense, hence, who's her sister? Who's her worker? Who's her baby's dinner? Where's that cordite blowing in from? Where not to be when that just launched missile lands? How many of her nests have they blown up by now? They've driven her to ground while their drones fly free. Her antennae measure what's left of her terrain. Is this cell big enough for a grub to grow? Is this burrow family-sized or a snug bunker for solitude? A quick sweep of burrow walls tells her hard earth, cool as river mud, hard work of my ancestress, scraping out this haven for queens. It's quiet here beneath the palace. Breast to the ceiling, the tips of her flagella pick up the faint rumble of trucks, tanks, boots playing chase overhead. But he's no child, her enemy. If she blocks out the burrow's stale breath and ticking heart, antennae pick up voices twitching, ants caught in the shifting grit packed between burrow and palace. She tracks the voices back, climbs the circuitry inside the palace walls, rides electromagnetic waves, pulsing syllables to the king's ear, feels them tap his eardrum and vibrate his ossicles, phonemes exciting pheromones as he gibbers into his phone, finger now swiping its screen, coaxing images, begetting images. A raindrop swollen with light, a rose, a kitten, a child with baby goats, a fast car, cars racing, limos like black beetles crowding the entrance of a gold hotel, a flag flying from an aircraft carrier, oil-slicked birds, bombers dropping bombs on hillside villages, cratered hillsides, rubble-clogged streets and streams, a child's cratered eye. She feels what a wasp feels, lets her antennae rest, but checks in often on the palace, learning the true dimensions of her borough, her kingdom. Listening, she slips in signals of her own, pricks to let him know she's there, ready to end his long war. The next one I'm going to read is the first poem that I wrote that became part of this manuscript. So this book took 17 years to write, and 9/11 was the instigating event. And it was really hard for me to do anything after that. But then all kinds of things came together into this kind of fever dream of a poem called Fear. One morning, Fear was a little kingdom inhabited by flags and burnt matchsticks and me, scuttling down cratered avenues to the library, where my job was making sense of what was left of the world. Our king sulked in a dim corner, pretending to read old magazines, eluding for now the grip on his shoulder, the usurping voice. "Time's up, Your Highness. The librarian will put those away." I bowed. He nodded. His thin lips made me think of the one-armed girl eating dirt in the square. The day was hot. The building stank. Decades of pigeons roosting and dying. The attic had tainted stacks of diaries, histories, novels, atlases, and lexicons of extinct empires. I, their final guardian, our king, the relic and oracle of uncatalogued silences suffered and stored. Dust shook down, windows rattled as tanks groaned in the streets. Open-mouthed, staring like a Boy Scout stripped of his badges, the king let me lead him to a basement table and give him my pocket knife and a carton of unreckoned contents of his regime. As I dragged more cartons from the shadows, he slit open files and envelopes, studied photographs of people with amputated names, transcribed tapes of a woman whispering in a closet, scraped samples from crumbling confessions, scanned columns of numbers and burned them and sniffed their smoke, nodded in a trance, his gaze so rapt I bent my ear close to his lips, hoping for a hint. A shell burst above us. A shadow whimpered behind me. He cowered as boots pounded down the stairs, and I was glad to snatch my knife away, glad to point to his dank little uniform, glad to let them open the ledger of my body, to feel their bayonets inscribe me with their cleansing lies. Yes. Honestly, when I was writing that one, I had no idea it was going to take that turn at the end. I'm like, crazy.
Dear me.
Yes. He was the first of many mad narrators in this book. The next poem I'm going to read, however, is by narrated by a group of people who are not mad, but they are so much part of the power structure they don't realize how mad what they are doing is. And those of us who remember what happened at Abu Ghraib, the prison in Iraq, will know where this was coming from. How the torturers come to truth. This one's a Sistina, by the way, Poetry Speaks. On the wall, the sergeant writes a word you've never heard before we tell its story. We come to truth as you first learn a sentence. Can you explain the meaning of this passage? The word sinks through you, leaves a hole to bury not the meaning, but the body. We come to truth the way you learn your body has been defined by lawful hands and words. We thread our wires deeper into your holes to teach you what your role is in our story. You'll learn no cipher guarantees safe passage when you are not the author of your sentence. We come to truth as fragments of a sentence because the mutterings of nobody echoed all night along the passage after the slow dissection of your word. Across the land, the ending of your story crawls back to fall more bloody in its hole. We come to truth. We look into the whole. Hair, teeth, excrement. We make a sentence to hold what isn't there. Inside the story, someone's pulled a sheet across your body, now muddled in the shadows like a word erased in the dark, fouling the passage where you'll come to truth, this sealed-off passage that serves as well as any other hole. If someone asks about you, there's no word. The desert spreads before us like a sentence erased by morning, no trace of the body that might insist on telling its own story. Truth comes, of course, telling its crazy story, of which it cannot verify one passage. Like a bullet as it leaves the body, without memory of blood, bone, or hole, we hear the judge pronouncing one more sentence against our enemy, your word. Listen, our story is all that keeps us whole. Every bent passage, each bruised sentence breaks our bodies on the truth of the word. In the interrogation room, I think you've mistaken me for this son you think I have. The one you imagine I might have seen riding some mule cart down the alley toward the palace last night when I was out taking out the trash. True, I was taking out the trash, a chore I might have given my son, had I a son, as you've imagined. But no, just me carrying kitchen scraps, wrapped in that morning's paper, the one with the king's birthday letter. Dear children, you're the best gift I could ask for. Same as last year, same picture, same smile stuffed in the bin in the alley. Past curfew? Yes, but the trash stank. No, it really stank. Like those trenches along Palace Square we're not supposed to talk about. No, no one else was out. Certainly no cart loaded as you describe with explosives, of which I, being a priest, am ignorant. Yes, I heard the explosion. Yes, I went inside. Yes, you're right. It is odd about my vestments having gone missing. But I haven't worn them for so many years now. Perhaps my late wife stored them or even sold them after the ban on the temples, which I know we're not supposed to talk about. But here we are. Had I a son, your suspicions would be reasonable. And had I a son who did this, I would turn him in. But my wife and I were childless. You're sure the cart that blew up by the palace was driven by a priest? Hard to believe. Yes, I'd love a cigarette. God save the king. A son would be a blessing in these times. You know, sometimes you write a poem, you get like one good image, and it's like, well, that's nice, that was one good image. And you put that aside, but then you just kind of can't let go of the image. That's what happened with this one. And it's the image of the tree that's in here, which kept haunting me for a long time. The poem's called You Have No Idea How Bad It Was. Hard times. If we could eat, we believed. Who knew why the war started? When our next meal would come? Life, a grime-stuck bowl on the pantry's highest shelf. Even my tree died. My tree sprouted from the rubble of my mother's apartment building, leaves shiny and thick-veined. Root out invaders, the king told us on TV. But I thought, what if it gives me fruit? A week, and the little sapling reached my knees. 2 months, husband tall. Its leaves sprang thorns at their tips. They grazed my cheeks when I tended it. I dug out bricks and built a low wall. Kill strangers, blared the king's voice all night from army trucks roaming the capital. I stuffed strips from my shirt in my ears. Burn images that are not mine. Eat books and shit out their lies. One morning, white blossoms covered it, reeking of gasoline. I danced in mother rubble, clapped and sang praises to my tree, passed out in its shade. I woke, blooms gone, black sap oozing from its wrinkled trunk. Now my enemies have locked me in a cell, and my feet have forgotten my legs, and my lips hate my mouth, and sometimes my fingers crawl up the wall to the window grate, so hungry they could eat up all the light. So, trying to imagine what it would be like to live in a world like this, I realized that there would be many people who would be leading what seemed like ordinary lives until something interrupted that. Toilet paper. I go down to the basement to grab a roll of toilet paper from the shelf, but there isn't any. And where the shelf had stood, the wall is wide open. Inside, a uniformed man sits at a desk, lamplit, its top littered with paper, regular paper, the kind you write on. There's a chair. The man gestures toward it, so I obey and sit. The man shuffles some papers, chooses one, and hands it to me, asking, "Did you write this?" Being a writer, I'm curious to know if this is in fact my work, so I take it and try to read it, but the words tell bloody fantasies of regicide, slaughter, revenge. I hand it back. No, I could never write that. Besides, we have a president, not a king. The man points at the page. I lean in to see my name, my signature. The man slides the sheet in the folder, closes it. What were you looking for when you came down here? I squirm, clench my anus shut. It's personal. This cheap deodorant reeks, mingles with the basement's mildew. I'm nauseous. Do you have, what's it called, a warrant? The man sighs, removes his glasses, rubs his eyes. I didn't come to take anything or arrest you. I came to ask if you know your name is on all of us. He gestures across the desk. Behind me, the wall closes. I hear someone walk down the basement stairs, hear the plastic crackle as someone takes a roll from the package and walks back upstairs to have, I'm sure, a normal hygienic shit while I'm stuck reading, ashamed of my filth, while the man watches. The baker. Lately, I've been baking people I mold from spit and clay. Maybe they don't look like people. Headless hat stands, baguettes on tripods, but I know what they are, and so do they. At dawn, after they've cooled on the rack, I set them on a chessboard made from a butcher block. Each waits, meditating on its shadow, poised on a light or dark square. Toward noon, they start to move, wary of one another as they inch across the board. Mid-afternoon, something about the light agitates their limbs, and they glide, zigzag, and tumble like soldiers dodging bullets. Some cower in corners while the rest collide and merge. A new beast, horn-crowned, stout, thick-legged, he hunts the others, his touch poison, paralyzing, rigid, each sinks into a light or dark square. The last one caught, the king sinks with it. The board is empty and it's dark. So I shut up the shop and go to bed and try, under my quilt, to remember who I am. Panicked until it comes to me. I am king. All right on time? So, this next poem is the only poem in which the wasp speaks in the whole book. Testament of the Blue Wasp. The king's voice wobbles across the palace square, from loudspeakers tucked under gun turret eaves, slips through brickwork, pavement, sand to my nest. Some prayer, some rumor of war, some lie, taped, it's all taped. I've heard it all. Hunched, I sift his words, sorting them into heaps of darker and lighter grains, some so slick from wind I imagine wet, almost remember water. Listen, I've lived all my lives here beneath your palace square, tending my nest, my babies' ghosts. Before there was a palace, a king, before there was sand, there was good mud to dig nests in, cool havens beneath the heat, and my prey understood me.